Luxembourg City, January 7, 1945, early evening. The snow outside the Allied headquarters had begun to fall again, slow and clean, covering the scars of the Battle of the Bulge as if nature itself was trying to forget what had just happened. On paper, the crisis was easing. The German offensive was collapsing. Maps were being redrawn with cautious optimism. To the outside world, the war in the West looked almost under control. Inside one quiet office, it was not. General Omar Bradley sat alone at his desk. No aides, no generals, no noise, just a stack of papers, a lamp casting a dull yellow light, and the soft ticking of a clock that sounded far too loud in the silence. Bradley did not look like a man about to change history. He never did. He looked exactly as he always had, calm, plain, almost forgettable. The kind of man you would overlook in a crowded room. But something inside that room was tightening. The war outside felt distant. The pressure inside that office did not. This was not a moment of shouting or slammed fists. This was the moment before something irreversible happens. The kind of moment history rarely records, because nothing appears to be happening at all. This is the moment history doesn't show. Omar Bradley was never meant to be the loud one. In an army filled with men who seemed carved for statues, Bradley looked like a school teacher who had wandered into the wrong profession. He didn't wear ivory-handled pistols like Patton. He didn't cultivate a theatrical image like Montgomery. He spoke softly. He dressed plainly. He avoided the press. To many observers, he seemed almost boring. And that was exactly the point. Bradley believed war was not about glory. It was about responsibility. His philosophy was simple and deeply unfashionable in a world of egos. A commander exists to make life survivable for the men below him. Soldiers first, headlines last. He ate with enlisted men. He listened more than he spoke. He believed loyalty to allies, to command, to the system, was not weakness but strength. For years, this approach had worked. While Patton thundered and Montgomery postured, Bradley absorbed pressure quietly. He let others take credit. He trusted that fairness would eventually prevail. He trusted Dwight Eisenhower, not just as supreme commander, but as a friend, to be an honest referee between powerful personalities. Silence, Bradley believed, was discipline. What Bradley did not yet understand was that in coalition warfare, silence is often misread. What he saw as restraint, others saw as permission. What he believed was maturity, others interpreted as surrender. And once that misunderstanding took hold, it became dangerous. The first true crack appeared not with gunfire, but with paperwork. December 1944 had torn a hole through the American lines. The German offensive in the Ardennes had driven a massive wedge deep into Allied territory. Communications were strained. Roads were clogged. Headquarters struggled to maintain contact with forward units. In that chaos, Eisenhower made a decision meant to stabilize the front. At least that was the justification. Using disrupted communication as the official reason, Eisenhower ordered the transfer of the U.S. First Army and the U.S. Ninth Army to British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery's command. On paper, it was temporary, administrative, sensible. In reality, it was catastrophic. With a single decision, Omar Bradley lost command of nearly 200,000 American soldiers. Two-thirds of his fighting strength vanished overnight. Divisions he had trained, organized, and led since D-Day were suddenly no longer his. The commander of the largest American force in Europe was reduced to overseeing only Patton's Third Army in the South. It was a demotion without the courtesy of being named as one. Bradley argued that his communications were still functioning. He pointed out that the crisis was already stabilizing. None of it mattered. The order stood. His armies were gone, placed under a man who openly disdained American methods and had little patience for American initiative. Bradley did not explode. He did not threaten resignation. He did not call Eisenhower in anger. He absorbed it, quietly, publicly loyal, privately wounded. He told himself this was temporary, that the alliance mattered more than pride, that unity was more important than control, for now. Then Montgomery arrived. On Christmas Day, while American soldiers froze in foxholes, Montgomery came to inspect his new command. He arrived late. He arrived comfortably. His polished uniform and composed manner stood in sharp contrast to the exhausted American units that had just endured the heaviest fighting of the war. Almost immediately, he canceled American plans for a rapid counterattack. Bradley's commanders had prepared to strike while the enemy was still vulnerable. Montgomery rejected the plan. He ordered delays, reorganization, defensive tidying, procedure. Those delays were not abstract. Every hour mattered. Every pause allowed German units to regroup. American divisions that were ready to move were ordered to wait. Medics requesting artillery cover were denied because the request had not passed through the correct channels. Initiative, the very thing that had kept American units alive during the worst days of the Bulge, was smothered by protocol. The cultural clash was brutal. American doctrine favored speed, improvisation, momentum. Montgomery believed in control, caution, and absolute adherence to process. On paper, both approaches had logic. In frozen forests filled with wounded men, the difference was measured in lives. Bradley watched it happen from the sidelines. Reports filtered back. Units stalled. Opportunities missed. Men dying not because the enemy was stronger, but because permission had not yet been granted. Bradley said nothing publicly. He defended the alliance. He smoothed tensions. He told himself this was the price of cooperation. But pressure does not disappear when it is ignored. It accumulates. Bradley continued to believe in Eisenhower. Continued to believe that restraint would be rewarded. Continued to believe that loyalty would be recognized. He suppressed his frustration for the greater good. He absorbed insult after insult because he believed unity was fragile, and someone had to protect it. What he did not realize was that every silent concession reinforced a dangerous illusion. To Montgomery, Bradley's calm did not look like strength. It looked like a man who could be pushed. To others, his patience looked like acceptance. The very traits that made Bradley dependable were being interpreted as weakness, and weaknesses in wartime invite exploitation. Sitting alone in his office that January evening, Bradley had not yet spoken his breaking words. He had not yet picked up the phone. He had not yet crossed the line that could not be uncrossed. But the quiet man was running out of silence. He still believed in the alliance. He still trusted Eisenhower. He still told himself this could be endured. He did not yet understand that his restraint was being mistaken for surrender, and that misunderstanding was about to cost everyone far more than pride. The paper on Bradley's desk was heavier than it looked. It wasn't classified. It wasn't dramatic. It was just numbers, columns, totals, cold. Official figures typed neatly onto a single sheet. But Bradley understood something most people never do. Numbers can scream louder than words. 19,000 American soldiers killed. More than 47,000 wounded. Tens of thousands missing. It was the butcher's bill of the Battle of the Bulge, and it sat there accusingly, soaked in the invisible weight of blood and frozen breath. Every number represented a boy who would never go home, a family that would receive a folded flag instead of a voice. Bradley stared at the page longer than he needed to. He knew these numbers were real because he had watched the men who created them march forward into hell. Then he turned on the radio. The press conference began calmly. Bernard Montgomery's voice was smooth, confident, almost cheerful. For 30 minutes, Bradley listened as reality was reshaped in real time. Montgomery spoke as if the battle had been a controlled exercise, a British operation tidied up by his steady hand. He described decisions he hadn't made, victories he hadn't earned, outcomes paid for with American lives. Bradley felt something inside him harden. In the sectors where fighting had been the most violent, Montgomery's British units had barely engaged. Many had been held in reserve, their casualties numbered in the hundreds. Meanwhile, American divisions had been shredded, entire regiments reduced to fragments. Yet Montgomery spoke as if the victory had been his alone. This wasn't exaggeration. This wasn't arrogance. This was erasure. Every time Montgomery said "I," Bradley felt it like a blade. Credit was being harvested from graves. The victory narrative was being built on the bodies of men who had followed American orders, not British ones. To Bradley, it felt obscene. Not just wrong, but sacrilegious. He realized, with a sudden clarity, that this was no longer about command structures or battlefield doctrine. This was about honor. And honor, once stolen, could not be politely requested back. The room went silent after the broadcast ended. The radio clicked off. The snow outside continued to fall, indifferent to everything that had just changed. Bradley remained seated, motionless. He did not raise his voice. He did not curse. A terrifying calm settled over him, the kind that only appears when a decision has already been made. For years he had been the reasonable one, the loyal one, the man who absorbed humiliation so others could maintain harmony. He had allowed Eisenhower to trade his authority for political balance. He had allowed Montgomery to treat American soldiers like interchangeable assets. No more. Bradley reached for the secure phone. When Eisenhower answered, Bradley's voice was steady, almost gentle. There was no anger in it. No emotion at all. That was what made it so dangerous. "Ike," he said. There was a pause. Then Bradley continued. "You have a choice to make." He did not argue his case. He did not explain himself. He did not negotiate. He stated a fact as calmly as one would announce the weather. "I cannot serve under Montgomery. If he commands American troops again, you can send me home." That was it. No compromise, no appeal to friendship, no suggestion of reconciliation. It was a binary ultimatum, him or me. Bradley understood exactly what he was doing. He was placing the full weight of the American command, structure on Eisenhower's desk and daring him to choose. On the other end of the line, Eisenhower went silent. For the first time, he understood the stakes. This wasn't a resignation threat. It was a structural collapse waiting to happen. Bradley was not just a general. He was the backbone of the American army in Europe. Losing him would mean chaos, political disaster, and the potential unraveling of Allied unity. The quiet man had finally spoken. And when he did, the entire system shook. Word spread quickly. George Patton, never one to let restraint interfere with conviction, immediately backed Bradley. If Bradley went home, Patton would follow. Other commanders closed ranks. The American leadership, long strained by appeasement, suddenly unified. Eisenhower was forced to confront a truth he had avoided for months. Appeasing British pride was no longer worth sacrificing American command integrity. The political cost had become too high. The balance had shifted. Maps were redrawn, authority reassigned. Within days, American armies began returning to American control. Bradley said nothing publicly. He didn't need to. He had already won the only argument that mattered. And then came proof. In March 1945, as Montgomery meticulously prepared a massive, carefully choreographed crossing of the Rhine in the north, Bradley's forces encountered something unexpected. At Remagen, American troops discovered the Ludendorff Bridge still standing, intact, a miracle of opportunity. Bradley did not ask for permission. He did not consult Montgomery. He did not wait for Eisenhower. He gave one order: get across. American units surged forward immediately. While Montgomery continued rehearsing his grand operation, Bradley's soldiers were already on the far side of the Rhine. By the time British forces launched their long-planned crossing, 4 American divisions were already deep inside Germany. There were no speeches, no press conferences, just results. The war accelerated. The German defense collapsed faster than anyone expected. Bradley's decision shortened the conflict by weeks. It was the ultimate rebuttal to everything Montgomery had claimed. Speed beat ceremony, trust beat control, action beat ego. The relationship between Bradley and Montgomery never recovered. Coordination became minimal. Information was shared only when required. Bradley was no longer the accommodating partner. He was an independent commander, focused solely on ending the war. History remembers Victory Day photographs of smiling generals standing side by side. What it rarely shows is what came before: the quiet moments, the betrayals, the lines that once crossed can never be uncrossed again. Omar Bradley remained the GI's general to the end. He never chased glory. But he learned something essential. Humility is a virtue. Self-respect is a requirement. Silence has power, but only until it is mistaken for submission. There comes a moment when even the quietest man must stand up and say, enough. On that day, Bradley didn't just reclaim command. He reclaimed honor. So here's the question for you. If you were in Bradley's position, would you have stayed silent for the sake of unity, or risked everything to draw the line? Tell me what you think in the comments. I read everyone. If you believe quiet leadership can be just as powerful as loud ambition, hit like. And if you want more Hidden World, War II stories, where decisions behind closed doors changed history, make sure you subscribe, because the most important battles are often fought in silence.